Hi everyone, welcome to today's webinar, How to Reach Your College Savings Goals with a 529 Plan. I'm Katie Flynn from savingforcollege.com. Thank you for joining us today. I'm so excited to see that we have such a great turnout. We're going to get started in just a few minutes, give everyone a few more minutes to join us. I'll start off by saying this webinar is brought to you by Upromise. Upromise is a smart way to save for college every day by shopping online, going out to eat, booking travel, and more. It's free to join Upromise and it's simple to use, and you can learn more at upromise.com. In just a few minutes when we start, Matt Toner from GradVisor will be joining me, and today we'll be discussing 529 plans and some important tax and financial aid considerations around them. If anyone has any questions during the presentation, you can type it into the question box in your control panel, and you should see that question box in your control panel right underneath where it says webcam. That'll be on the right of your screen. And we'll do our best to answer as many questions as we can during the hour. But if by chance your question doesn't get answered, you can always shoot us an email, or you can visit our forum at forum, that's FORUM, savingforcollege.com. After the presentation, we'll also be sending an email that's going to give you a chance to give us feedback. So please take a quick second to let us know what you think, and also if there's anything else you'd like to see from us at savingforcollege.com. We'd love to hear what you think. And also wanted to mention that this month, May 29th, is 529 Day, which is National College Savings Plan Day. And that's important. Some states are looking to boost interest and participation in their plans, so they're offering various sweepstakes, contests, and incentives. Especially for those of you who have not opened a plan yet, May is usually a great time to do so because there's a lot of contests going on. You might get some extra matching contributions and things like that from your state. So you can go ahead and check your state's plan to see what they're offering, or you can view our list on savingforcollege.com. And we'll just wait about one more minute to start with our slides. I did see we have a couple questions coming in about whether or not you will receive the copy of the presentation, and yes, we can send out the slides too. That's no problem. Okay, and it's about time to get started. And just to recap, here's what we're going to cover today. We'll start out by talking about different ways you can save for college or private K through 12 school. Matt's going to cover why we think 529 plan is the best way to save for education. He'll also talk about how to select the right 529 plan for your family. And then we're going to talk about how to maximize savings with Upromise, and then get into how 529 plans affect need-based federal financial aid and some special tips for grandparents. And then finally, we'll end our presentation by discussing the best way to withdraw from your 529 plan when it's time to pay for college. So first, we're going to talk about the different ways to save for college. According to Sallie Mae's 2018 How America Saves for College report, 22% of families said they're saving for college in a regular savings account. Regular savings accounts are okay. I mean, they're safe, but of course they do have very low interest rates. I know the rates are getting a little higher these days, but they're still very low compared to investment accounts. And of course, there's no tax benefits. The study also showed that 14% of parents use a mutual fund or other investment account to save for college, which is better, but remember that most of these investment accounts are taxable. So what we're going to talk about for the next few minutes are the tax-advantaged accounts that are designed to help families save for education, and the comparisons between these four accounts. And we're going to look at 529 plans, Coverdell education savings accounts, Roth IRAs, and then custodial accounts such as those under the Uniform Gifts to Minors Act and the Uniform Transfer to Minors Act. And as you'll see from the table, one of the biggest benefits to using a 529 plan is that you can change the beneficiary. So that's going to be really helpful in cases such as What if your child doesn't go to college? Or what if you save too much money and you want to give money to a sibling? You can change the beneficiary to a qualifying family member. And that's also the case with the Coverdell Education Savings Account. You also want to pay attention to the different restrictions that these accounts have. With the Coverdell, you're limited to only saving $2,000 per year per beneficiary, and that's a total $2,000. So that means if a grandparent has a Coverdell for your child and you have Coverdell for your child, the total amount of contributions can only be $2,000 per year, which isn't going to cover very much of the total cost of college. Same with a Roth IRA, you're limited to $6,000 per year in 2019 or $7,000 if you're over 50. And then you just compare that to a 529 plan. 529 plans have no annual contribution limits. They do have aggregate contribution limits that are determined by the state, and that amount is going to, it's based on how much an expensive college education would be in that state. So these limits can be as high as $529,000. So with a 529 plan, you can fully fund a child's education. And then finally, we'll look at income limits. 529 plans are available to anyone. It doesn't matter how poor you are or how rich you are. And that's very different from a Coverdell or a Roth IRA, which are only allowed for families who meet certain income limits. The next biggest difference are the investment options. With a 529 plan, you're going to be limited to what the program offers. 529s do not offer self-directed investments like a Roth IRA does, but these 529 portfolios are managed by investment professionals whose main objective is to maximize your college savings. So as Matt will get into a little bit later, there's going to be portfolios designed to pay for college based on your child's age, and they will automatically shift allocations to maximize your savings for your child. And of course, 529 plans are the only account on this list that offers state income tax benefits. Over 30 states now offer either a state income tax credit or tax deduction. When you're making your choice of how to save to college, you also want to think about qualified expenses. So what you can pay for, what qualified expenses means is what you're going to be able to take a tax-free withdrawal to pay for. And with a 529 plan, college expenses include tuition, fees, books, computers, and related equipment, and then also supplies, special needs expenses, and some room and board as long as the student is enrolled half-time, and that can even be off-campus apartments. And then for K through 12 expenses, you're limited to up to $10,000 per year in tuition. With the Coverdell, again, it's a $2,000 limit per beneficiary that you can contribute, and you can use that money to pay for books, supplies and equipment, academic tutoring, in some cases even room and board, uniforms, and transportation, in addition to tuition and fees. And now that's going to be for college or K through 12. With the custodial accounts, you can spend the money, or the beneficiary is allowed to spend the money on anything. So, which is great. You don't have to worry about, maybe they don't go to college or you don't want to use that money for college. You will not be taxed on it. However, just remember that the child's going to gain control of those assets when he or she reaches legal age. So that means they might not use the money for college. They might want to use it for something else. So that's important to keep in mind. We did have a question come in about what types of schools you can pay for with a 529 plan. So for example, if the student wants to attend a trade school or a community college or some other type of certificate training. Well, the good news is that you can use a 529 to pay for those types of programs as long as the school is what's considered an eligible education institution. And we do have a tool on savingforcollege.com that's called Is Your Institution Eligible for 529, where you can go ahead and enter the name of the school and you can see whether or not it will be considered qualified for your 529 plan. Someone else asked about room and board. Are there any situations where room and board is a qualified expense? Room and board is a qualified expense for 529 plans as long as the student is enrolled at least half-time. So that's going to include both on and off-campus housing. If your child is living in an apartment off-campus, your qualified room and board costs must be less than or equal to what's included in your school's cost of attendance allowance for room and board. And if you don't know this information, you can always get it from your financial aid office. We had a question come in asking why invest in a 529 plan rather than these other investment plans. And I think we kind of covered this already, and Matt's going to go into it in more detail, but I'll just stress, just the changing beneficiary is huge. The fact that there's very high contribution limits and no income limits, those are the main reasons, but I'll let Matt cover that in the following slides. Someone else asked if 529 plans can be used for college entrance exams and other preparatory activities. And unfortunately, no, only tuition, fees, books, supplies, and equipment that are related to the enrollment or attendance at an eligible institution are considered qualified expenses. So these types of fees that are paid prior to the student's acceptance for admission would be considered a non-qualified expense, and that's going to be subject to income tax and a 10% penalty on the earnings portion of the withdrawal. And then one more question about qualified expenses: is a computer or laptop a qualified expense if it is used but not required? It seems like the law has changed. And that's correct. The PATH Act in 2015 did make computers and related equipment a permanent qualified expense. And as we know, it might be difficult to get through college these days without computers and internet. So you can go ahead and take a tax-free distribution to pay for that. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Matt Toner, who's going to go into more detail about 529 plans and how they work.
All right, thanks, Katie. Yes, my name is Matthew Toner. I am the Director of Strategy for GradVisor, which is an online platform that makes 529 plans easy for employers to offer to their employees. So today we're going to go a little bit into about 529 plans, the way they operate, how they work, what the advantages are for them, and then go into some strategies about what we're going to do when we're selecting a 529 plan and their investment portfolio. But let's start with the basics here. So let's take a high-level view about 529 plans and what they are. So first question, of course, what is a 529 plan? Well, essentially, the government created these vehicles to help families set aside money for future college costs, and as Katie mentioned, now K through 12 tuition as well. And the way they work is that post-tax dollars go in, so it's not a pre-tax investment like a 401k, but those dollars will be invested into an investment portfolio, and your account will grow tax-deferred, and then will eventually be completely tax-free when using it to pay for higher education expenses as well as K through 12 tuition. And Katie went over those expenses a little bit: tuition, fees, room and board, both on and off campus, computers, and anything else needed for enrollment. So we had a question, I think before, but Greg had asked, are there any advantages to using a 529 plan over simply investing in the stock market? Well, what I just went through is a huge one, Greg. So you're essentially removing all of those capital gains from the equation. If you invested just into the market, at the end of the day, whether it be long or short-term gains, you're going to be paying 15 or 20% on all the gains in your account. With a 529 plan, that's not going to be a case. You take a tax-free withdrawal when you're using it for those qualified expenses. But back to 529 plans. So there's over 90 of them all across the country. Each one of them are run by the state. So every single state has at least one, except for the state of Wyoming. And you can invest as an investor in any one of these, except for a few exceptions that have residency requirements. Like South Carolina, you can only open up if you're a South Carolina resident. The same thing for Louisiana. And all of these different plans will have different fees. They'll have different investment options. They'll have different performance. They'll have different investment managers. And that's what you'll see at the bottom here. Most of the time, the state will partner with a large financial institution to actually run this plan for them. So when you are investing in the different investment options and you're actually investing your money, they're going to be invested with the Vanguards, Fidelities, Ascensus, T. Rowe Price, BlackRock, TIAA, Crefts of the world. So they're actually going to be the ones that are holding on to those monies, and then their investment managers are going to be the ones choosing your investments for you. But now let's take a little deeper look at the actual 529 plan benefits. And there are many of them. So as Katie said, they're really designed to maximize your college savings, and you should really take advantage of it if your goal is to save for college. So the first one will be the tax benefits. As I just alluded to, obviously there's incredible federal tax benefits for investing in a 529 plan. But in addition, and Katie alluded to this a little earlier, over 30 states offer some sort of tax deduction, state tax deduction or credit for contributions into your 529 plan. And we'll go a little deeper into that in a little bit. Next will be crowdfunding. So this isn't an investment vehicle like a 401k where you can only contribute to it and then your employer might offer some sort of match. Anyone and everyone can contribute to this 529 plan. So that means that you can ask grandma and grandpa, aunts and uncles, friends and family to contribute directly to your child's 529 plan. So this is a great way to increase your savings by asking friends and family around holidays, birthdays, graduations, etc. And many of the times, these 529 plans will have these, online portals to make it easy for you to ask for contributions. So essentially, they'll give you a unique code after your 529 plan is opened, and you can simply send out an email, let everyone know that if they want to contribute for your child's graduation, just go to this link and use this code, and they can go ahead and send some money to the account. So I think Sally Mae says around 6 to 7% of contributions that come in are from friends and family these days. So, don't be afraid to ask to crowdfund your account. Next is going to be flexibility. So 529 plans are actually a super versatile investment product. You can change your 529 plan once every rolling 12 months, and you can change your investment option twice in a calendar year. So don't be afraid that you may move soon, or your 529 plan might start doing bad, or the investment portfolio might not be right for you. You're going to have the chance to change it if you want to get out of it. I do get a lot of questions all the time about, what if my kid doesn't go to school? What if they get a scholarship, etc.? Well, if your child gets a scholarship, you can remove up to the amount from the scholarship from your 529 plan without having to pay a 10% penalty that you would normally have to pay with a non-qualified withdrawal. If your child doesn't go to school, doesn't end up going to college, you can rename the beneficiary. You can put it out to a different sibling, a niece or nephew. You can also just let that money grow in the account and maybe use it for future grandchildren. So there's no really kind of like time limits that you have with some other investment vehicles about when you need to use that money by. But if all else fails, and you have to remove the money from the account because you have no reason for it to be in there, that is going to be a non-qualified withdrawal, which means that the earning portions of your account will be subject to income taxes and a 10% penalty. So let's say you made $10,000 worth of contributions, and now your account is worth $20,000. $10,000 of that would be subject to taxes and a 10% penalty. Your contributions, or what's known as your principal, is never touched. Elaine asked, can I switch or transfer a plan that was set up with an advisor to a direct sold 529 plan to avoid advisor fees? Absolutely. As I said, you can switch over your 529 plan once every rolling 12 months. So as long as it's been open for at least a year, you can switch over that 529 plan. However, and we'll go a little bit more into detail with advisor sold plans in a bit. If it is an advisor sold plan, you're going to want to have to check with your advisor, as some share classes may have minimum time periods you need to be invested in. Otherwise, you may be subject to some sort of penalty by the actual financial institution itself. Then Eric asks, for multiple kids with separate 529 accounts, is it possible to use funds from a sibling's 529 account? Absolutely. So a lot of the plans make it pretty easy. It's just usually, one piece of paperwork. You can switch over some or all of the assets from one child to another. So let's say you're investing in 3 plans. The oldest child is going to college, and it's not going to completely cover it. You'd be able to take some money from either your first or the middle or youngest child and switch it over to that 529 account. Just make sure you do that first. Don't remove the money from the account that's in another sibling's name and use that to pay for college. You have to use it for the beneficiary that's going to school, so transfer the assets over and then go ahead and use them. Going on, the next benefit, no income restrictions. And Katie had covered this earlier, so it doesn't matter how much or how little you make, there's going to be no income phase outs. So anyone and everyone can open up a 529 plan. And it could be for anyone else. It doesn't have to be a family member. If there's a cute kid down the street that you really like and you want to open up a 529 plan, you're welcome to do so. Next, minimal financial aid impact. And this is a big one, Katie. We hear it all the time. People worrying that saving is going to be detrimental to them getting some sort of financial aid package. I won't go into too much detail on this. Katie will cover it a little bit later. But 529 plans get favorable treatment. And it's assessed at a maximum of 5.64%. So if you have $10,000 in your account, the most your aid package will be reduced by, because of your 529 plan, will be $564. But once again, something Katie will go into in a little bit, something I'm sure a lot of people on this webinar are here for. And lastly, high contribution limits. So if you are in the fortunate situation where you do want to save a lot, perhaps you want your child to go on to get a medical degree or to get a law degree or something like that. In most cases, you can contribute in excess of $400,000 to a 529 plan. So if you do have aspirations of them going on to get another degree, you could save quite a lot in a 529 plan.
Matt, we just had a really interesting question come in that kind of goes along with the flexibility benefits. Matthew is asking, what is the oldest that you can start a 529 plan? One child is now 26 and going to postgraduate degree overseas. Can we open a 529 plan for that child, or that adult, actually?
It's a smart question from someone with a very smart name. There is absolutely no time limits on when you can start a 529 plan. So, the detriment to that is obviously that you may not have a lot of time to take advantage of compound interest. And maybe it's something you want to look into, an FDIC insured type of investment option that I'll cover in a little bit. But a great strategy to utilize is that if you do live in a state with a state tax deduction, let's say you live in Illinois, where they give up to a $20,000 tax deduction for married filing jointly, go ahead and invest that $20,000 in the Illinois plan. Usually there's a small withholding period, maybe a week or 30 days. But then take that state tax deduction and then utilize that money to pay for your postgraduate education. So there are kind of more finer strategies to think about with 529 plans, but the plain answer to your question is no, it's never too late to start a 529 plan. Prakash had asked Katie, is there a limit to the amount we can deposit when we contribute to a 529 plan? Does it matter if we make lump sum or monthly contributions? Well, the answer to that is that the only quote-unquote limit to in a 529 plan is the plan's contribution limit, those like 400K plus that we had talked about. However, to avoid any different types of tax consequences, you can currently contribute up to the annual gift tax exclusion, which means that if you're a single filer, that would be $15,000, or if you're a joint filer, it would be $30,000 a year. However, 529 plans have a unique thing that you can do, and it's what's known, in the industry as super funding. So this essentially means that you can choose to do 5 years worth of those gifts up front. That brings the total to $75,000 for a single filer and $150,000 for a joint filer. Any amount that you're going to contribute over that in a 5-year period is going to reduce the lifetime gift tax exemption, which I believe, Katie, is around $11.4 million now. So any amount above that will just reduce that number, and that's when the estate tax kind of planning comes into play. But, going on to the next slide here, thinking about the question we asked about, is it ever too late? It's a question we get all the time. What's the age that's best to start saving for my child's college education? And my response is always the same. The best thing you can do is to get started early, right? You want to take care of compound interest. It's your best friend. The longer it can be in the account, usually the better off you're going to be at the end of the day. If you look at the chart here, there's just really a tremendous difference, even in between 6 years. If you're contributing $200 a month, between 12 and 18 years, that can be in excess of $40,000. So if you can start early, if you're in the position to do so, I suggest you do, even if it is just getting $25 a month in that account started. You can increase your contributions later, but it's going to change the conversation and the dynamic around college savings. So get started as early as you can. But as Christine wanted to know, is it ever too late? Well, the answer is going to be no. It's never too late. This is especially the case, as I said, if your state offers some sort of tax incentive on their contribution. So earlier the better, but never too late is always going to be the answer there. And then to go into the strategy I was speaking about earlier and regarding FDIC insured or certificate of deposit types of investments, these kind of investments are ideal for those people who are maybe starting a little bit late, because they're going to give you a guaranteed return, usually over a certain amount of time periods, whether it be 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. So you can go ahead, invest in that, maybe get a guaranteed 2.5% return, get that state tax deduction if your state is offering one, and then at least you had some growth in the account while also getting taking advantage of those state tax deductions or credits. So moving on to one of the most important parts of this entire operation, and that's going to be, how do I select one of these 529 plans, right, Matt? You said that you can invest in any of them. Some of them are good, some of them are bad. They have different fees and stuff. So let's get down into the nitty-gritty, at least about how I think about selecting a 529 plan. And it's important to start at the high level. So the 529 world is really divided into two different types of plans: prepaid and savings plans. Prepaid plans are only offered by a few different states, but it's definitely an option that's available and could be a very good one for you. So essentially what the pitch is for these types of investments is lock in tomorrow's tuition rates at today's rates. So that's not exactly true. You'll hear it all the time. You're going to pay a premium or like a slightly inflated rate, but it's a viable option for a lot of parents. If your state does not offer a prepaid plan, you can always invest in the private tuition 529 plan, which operates the same way and has about 300 of our nation's top schools underneath its umbrella. One question you're going to hear if your state does have a prepaid option, Lisa asks, how are prepaid savings valued if a student goes to college in a different state? Well, each prepaid plan is a little bit different. However, the way many of them work is that they will pay out an amount equal to the weighted average tuition and contractually specified fees at your state's public institutions, never to exceed the actual tuition and fees you incur. So this makes it a little bit of an uncertain situation. So if your child were to go out of state and the tuition ends up being a lot less, then you were probably overpaying this whole time. And if your child goes to an out-of-state school and ends up being a lot more than your in-state tuition, then you weren't saving enough. So it does cause some uncertainty with these prepaid plans. But that's why there's the 529 savings plans. And this is really what most people think of when they think about a 529 plan. So you put money in, that's invested into an investment portfolio, and then your account goes up and down as your investment does. But to make things a little bit more complicated, these savings plans are divided into broker sold and direct sold 529 plans. And what I mean by that is that a direct sold 529 plan, you can go and open up yourself. You can go to the New York 529 plan website or the Illinois 529 plan website and just go ahead and open up that account by yourself. You would have to select your own investment options, select how much you would want to contribute, all that stuff, but it will be open in your name. A broker sold or advisor sold 529 plan, you need to use a financial advisor to open. Generally these types of plans are going to have a little bit higher fees on average, but they are going to have more investment options to choose from. And that's where Dejan's question comes into play. Does it ever make sense to go with an advisor sold plan? And my response would be, if you're simply going to choose an age-based investment option like the majority of parents, and we'll go into what that means in a little bit, I would say it doesn't really make a lot of sense. However, if you're a more savvy investor and you would like to build a certain type of investment portfolio, it could definitely make sense. So if you're interested in small cap, mid cap, large cap, different types of foreign investments, different types of real estate investments, it might make sense for you to look at an advisor sold plan because you're generally going to have a bigger investment option to choose from.
And Matt, we have a question.
Yep.
So Jeffrey is asking, can you have one of each plan, prepaid and savings, for the same beneficiary?
Awesome. That was what I was going to get into next, so perfect timing. Absolutely it does. And it's a strategy that a lot of parents down where I live, down in Florida, that they utilize. And that's because down in Florida we have great public institutions. However, they're very, very cheap for in-state residents here, and we do have a prepaid plan. So it's a plan that a lot of parents open up. It's called the Florida Prepaid Plan. However, on the off chance that their child does end up getting into like Harvard or does end up getting into Yale, et cetera, they do supplement that with a 529 savings plan. And there's other situations you might want to think about this too. Some of these prepaid plans only cover tuition. However, that's only a portion of the cost when it comes to college, right? So you're still going to have the room and board, you're still going to have books, et cetera. So even if you are just getting one of those prepaid tuition plans, you may want to think about supplementing it with a 529 savings plan for those other costs that you're going to have to incur. So moving on to the next slide here. This is what I said we were going to go over a little bit deeper earlier, is going to be tax incentives. So that's step 2, check your state's tax incentives. As I said earlier, over 30 states have a tax deduction or credit for contributions into a 529 plan. However, just like everything else, Katie, when it comes to 529 plans, it's not that simple. So in the map below on the screen here, you can see the different states that offer some incentives, and that's like about how much you would net out a year with those given assumptions. However, in most of these states, you're only going to get that tax deduction or credit if you open up and invest in your in-state plan. So what I mean by that is that if you live in Illinois, you have to open up the Illinois plan in order to get that deduction. If you live in New York, you have to open up the New York plan in order to get that deduction. If you invest in another state, you're going to be foregoing that deduction. Then there's a few awesome states that we call tax parity states. And these are going to be Arizona, Arkansas, Kansas, Minnesota, Missouri, Montana, and Pennsylvania. These are great states because they allow you to open up any 529 plan from across the country and then still get that state tax deduction or credit. So you can live in Arizona, open up the California 529 plan, and then still get an Arizona state tax deduction. But one thing I will tell you to be aware of is that sometimes these states, they allow for state tax deductions because the plan's fees are generally a lot higher. So sometimes these higher fees can wipe out your state tax deduction. So just take a look at it, see what the low fee plans are across the country, and then see what your state's plans fees are generally across the board, and see if it's worth it when it comes to that deduction, depending on how much you're contributing. Moving on to research and compare. So see, these are some of the additional things you're going to want to think about when it comes to opening up your 529 plan. Especially if you live in one of those states that doesn't give you a state tax deduction or credit, or you don't have a state income tax, hooray, like down here in Florida, you're going to want to think about these things. First one, the plan manager. Who's actually managing this plan? Are they well known? Have they been around for a while? You don't want to wake up one day and then they've chosen a different investment manager and you've got a whole different investment menu, a whole different set of fees, etc. And then in some cases, you may want to do it for convenience. So if you have Fidelity for your 401k, for your 401k, Fidelity offers a few different 529 plans. So perhaps you just want to open up a Fidelity plan so it's all in one place. So just take a look at your plan manager when you're opening it up. Next is a pretty straightforward and obvious one, fees. People don't want to have to pay a lot if they don't have to, right? So fees can vary widely. One plan can have over 10 times the cost of another plan. And these are obviously going to eat in your account over time because they're based on your account balance. As your account balance gets bigger, you're going to be paying more and more in fees. So even the difference in 60 basis points can make a huge difference over time. Next, investment options. Does the plan have a wide range of investments? If I'm a conservative investor, does the plan have one of those FDIC insured or CD products? How risky should my portfolio be? I want to make sure it's aligned with my tolerance for risk, etc. So make sure it has the type of investment options that you're looking for. And then lastly, performance, another pretty obvious one. Better returns mean more money. Why invest in Blockbuster when you could have been investing in Netflix, right? So keep an eye on how that plan and investment portfolios within that plan have performed over different time periods, 1, 3, 5, 10 years, etc. And if you need help researching and comparing all these, check out savingforcollege.com. We've got great 5 cap ratings. We've got an awesome comparison tool where you can compare all of this stuff. So if it does seem a little overwhelming, head to Saving for College and we'll help you sort it out. Next, another super important one, selecting an investment option. So at the top here, you're going to see the different factors to consider. 1, age-based static FDIC. Next, fees, then risk tolerance and investment horizon. And we'll go into first what the age-based static FDIC means. So a static investment portfolio has specific investment objectives, and their asset allocation will not change over time. And what I mean by that is that if you open up a portfolio and it is invested in 75% equities and 25% bonds, this will not change no matter how close your child gets to college. So, if you're invested in one of these heavy equity plans and something like 2008 happens when you're filling out your FAFSA, that's going to completely change the way that your college savings strategy and payment strategy. So keep an eye on that. Vinay had asked before the webinar, are there any 529 plans with mutual funds as investment options, or is it all index funds? Plans will usually have both, Vinay. There's both passive index funds, there's actively managed funds, there's socially responsible investing funds. So as I mentioned earlier, if you're looking for all these different types of portfolios, you may want to take a deeper look into advisor sold plans. Next type of option, the age-based investment option. So this is where a majority of the money goes into 529 plans today. So age-based investment options automatically become more conservative as your child gets closer to college. So what I mean by that is that your portfolio may be 100% invested in equities if he or she is a newborn, and then 10% in equities when they are about to attend college. So these are very popular amongst parents. You can do a little bit of like a set it and forget it type model. So what they're essentially trying to do is make sure that you're invested right with your time horizon. So if something like 2008 does happen when you're getting ready to go to college, you're kind of like shielded from some of that downside. One thing I'll mention though is that some plans will have more than one risk track for these age-based options. So they may have an aggressive track, they may have a moderate track, they may have a conservative track. So choose one that aligns with you. And that's where the risk tolerance comes into play. You want to know exactly what your risk tolerance is, of how volatile your investment's going to be, how much can you sweat that, and that's where the investment horizon comes into play as well. Generally, you want to be less aggressive of a portfolio when your child's getting closer to college. So if you choose one of those static portfolios, keep that in the back of your minds. FDIC insured options I talked about earlier. So FDIC insured options aren't in all 529 plans. Some of them are, they're in some 529 plans. And these are typically low risk investments such as savings accounts, certificates of deposits that I had mentioned earlier. And what they do is they guarantee you a rate of return for a certain time period, larger returns for longer periods. So if you have 3 years until college, you may want to invest in a 3-year FDIC type of insured product. But be aware of how long it's going to be until you tap that account. Because if you invest in one of those 3-year ones and then you take the money out in a year, you're usually going to be subject to some sort of penalty. But this type of structure makes it ideal for families whose children are about to go to college, people saving for K through 12 tuition, where you don't have a long investment horizon, grandparents, or anyone who considers themselves a conservative investor. And Ruth did ask, are 529 plans FDIC insured? Not all investment options, Ruth. As I said, if that's something you're interested in, you'll have to find a plan that has FDIC insured options. And actually one of the things you can research and compare on savingforcollege.com.
Okay, Matt, we had a question come in, which I think you might have covered, but maybe it's worth touching on it again since you're going over investment options. But someone is asking if they can change from a static to an age-based portfolio year by year.
So yeah, I think I had mentioned it earlier, but we might have glossed over it a little bit. But you can change your investment option twice a calendar year. So the good thing about the age-based options is that when they do kind of like reallocate, it's not going to be a change for you. But if you do want to put it into a static because you're a savvy investor and you're like, you know what, stock market's doing great right now. I know I'm in this like 50-50 bond portfolio because my kid's 12 years old. You want to switch it over to a 100% equity portfolio, you can go ahead and do that. And then maybe 8 months down the road, you think the stock market's due for a pullback, you want to switch back into that age-based option, you're welcome to do so. So you get to change it twice a calendar year. That's much different than the once a rolling 12 months for your actual 529 plan. So keep that in mind. There's a little bit of an acute difference. So do we have any other questions, Katie, about investment options?
No, I think you covered all the questions surrounding that topic.
Okay, great. If anybody does have more, intricate questions, or feel free to email me at matt@gradvisor.com, and I can get you some information. But other than that, Katie, I think it's your turn to take the controls again.
Okay, thanks, Matt. That was really helpful, I'm sure, for everyone. Now we're going to move on to talk about one strategy to help you maximize your college savings. So once you have that 529 plan open, you've picked out the right one based on Matt's advice. Something we recommend as an easy way to grow your savings is to open an account with Upromise. We think Upromise is a great complement to 529 plans. And when I say we, I'm speaking for Saving for College, and personally, I have a Upromise account. It's a free program that helps you earn extra money for college. So what is Upromise? It's a loyalty program that rewards members with cash back for making purchases online, dining out at participating restaurants, or using the Upromise MasterCard. And then the rewards you earn can be deposited into a linked 529 account, or if you don't have a 529 account yet, you can always put it into a checking or savings account. Upromise has been helping families save for college for almost 20 years, and they provide expert advice, simple tools, and unique offers that can help you grow and accelerate your college savings every day. With a Upromise account, there are multiple ways you can get incremental earnings to put into your 529. The first one is earning cash back for online purchases. You can earn rewards ranging from around 3% to 7% of your total purchase when you shop online through the Upromise participating retailers. And that's going to include, I'm sure that it will include stores that you shop at because it has so many. This includes clothing stores, flower delivery, hotels, and more. I mean, big name stores like Walmart, Macy's, I mean, almost anything you can think of. The next way you can earn your rewards is by dining out at participating restaurants. And to do this, you would link your credit or debit card to your Upromise account, and then you would earn 2% cash back when you use that same card to dine at one of their participating restaurants. You can even double your reward if you pay with a Upromise MasterCard. And it's really neat. Once you sign up for your free Upromise account, you can go on and check this out. You can actually put in your location, and Upromise will give you a list of participating restaurants in your area. So whether that's where you live, or maybe you're taking a summer vacation, you want to go out to eat, you can go in and see which restaurants will qualify for those Upromise rewards. And then the last way to earn rewards is to sign up for the Upromise MasterCard. Now, the Upromise MasterCard probably offers the biggest reward out of these three because you get 1.25% cash back on all of your purchases made. And they also give you an opportunity to earn an additional bonus reward through the Upromise Roundup program. And then you go ahead and link that to an eligible 529 plan account. When you link the Upromise MasterCard to your 529 plan, you can earn an additional 15% on all of the cashback rewards that you earned. So that's really great. And right now, any 529 plan is eligible, so it's not restricted to certain types of plans. So whatever plan you have, you can go ahead and do that. Upromise provides members with flexibility. It's so easy to use Upromise. It's free to sign up, as I mentioned. You just go to upromise.com. And then you can go ahead and link it to any 529 checking or savings account. But again, you don't need a 529 plan to sign up for Upromise. You can sign up right now, check it out, see how it works, and then once you choose your 529 plan and sign up, you can go ahead and link it. Someone just asked about how does Upromise work if you have 529 plan accounts for more than one child, which actually I do. I have 3 children. You set up one Upromise account, and what Upromise does is they take the earnings and they're equally distributed among your accounts. So they will go to each of your children. Another great feature is that anyone could be a member of Upromise, not just parents. So this could be grandparents, aunts, uncles, anyone. And what they can actually do is they can link their Upromise account to your 529 account. So you can get, their cashback rewards deposited into your child account. They also offer a lot of bonus deals during the holidays. I looked on there today and there's some deals if you're going to be sending flowers for Mother's Day or purchasing something else as a Mother's Day gift. Certain stores are giving extra bonuses for that, and the same thing applies during the holiday season. And just a little bit of savings each month can add up over time. By joining Upromise, you become a member of a like-minded community who share one common goal, which is saving for college.
Yeah, Katie, just to butt in, I mean, it's such a great program. I think I read an article the other day that some woman saved an additional $5,000 for college, through Upromise, starting off with just, little purchases here and there, but then, family vacations going through, hotels.com and stuff like that. So it can really add up over time, and it's free. It's free found money. So I can't stress enough how great this program is.
I agree, Matt. And remember, every dollar you save, even if it's a small amount, that's going to be less that your child has to borrow in student loans and pay interest on. So every little bit helps when it comes to saving for college. Someone asked if you can link a corporate card to a Upromise account. From what I understand, for the dining out option, you can link any credit or debit account, so you can use your corporate account to pay for the meal, and then you would get the reward, the 2.5% cashback reward that you can deposit into your 529 plan. So yes, that should work. Just checking to see if we have any other questions about Upromise. Okay, it doesn't look like it. If you do have some, please feel free to reach out to us or visit upromise.com. And next we'll talk about as Matt mentioned, one of our most popular topics, 529 plans and financial aid, which I have seen a number of questions come through already, so hopefully I can touch on everything during the next few minutes. If you have a 529 plan, does that mean your child will get less financial aid? A 529 plan can affect college financial aid, but the impact is very limited, and it's going to vary depending on who the account owner is. And when we talk about financial aid for the purposes of this presentation, I just want to point out that we're discussing federal need-based financial aid. There is institutional student aid that comes from the schools, but that's going to have different rules and it's going to vary by college. So for the general presentation, we're just going to talk about federal aid. And let's start by talking about the FAFSA. The FAFSA is the free application for federal student aid, which everyone should be filling out if you have a child going to college. And the amount of financial aid that your child receives is going to depend on what's called your expected family contribution, and that's your EFC. So the EFC is the amount that the college expects you to be able to pay out of pocket. The higher your EFC, the less financial aid you'll get, because that's the amount the school perceives that you have and that you don't need for college. So the formula to calculate EFC uses information that you enter on the FAFSA. And that's going to include income and assets from both the parents and the students. And as you can see from the slide, a student's income and assets are going to have the greatest impact on financial aid. So as you can see, some of the parent assets are sheltered by an asset protection allowance that is based on the age of the older parents. So just to give you an idea, right now, this protection allowance is currently around $12,000 for parents who are 48 years old. And that number will vary depending on the age of the parents. But as you can see, it's much more favorable for financial aid to have assets in the name of the parents and income as well. But now let's talk about 529s in the FAFSA. So you may have heard or read on our site that 529 plans receive favorable treatment on the FAFSA. And I'm going to go in the next 2 minutes or so discuss what that means. Many people ask, if I open a plan in the child's name, will it count as her asset? Well, a 529 plan account, whether it's owned by the parent or a dependent student, is going to be considered a parent asset. So that's pretty huge because, as I mentioned before, the first 12,000 or so is going to fall under the asset protection allowance, and it will not be counted towards funds available to pay for college. Of course, the exact amount is going to depend on the parent's age, as I mentioned, but a good portion is going to be sheltered by that allowance. And then any amount above that allowance is counted at a maximum of 5.64% of the 529 plan's account value. So let's say a parent has $10,000 in non-retirement assets, that $10,000 can only reduce financial aid by a maximum $564. Now, why is that favorable? Well, let's look at a custodial account. So a custodial account such as UGMA, UTMA, that's a student account. It's going to count as a student asset no matter what. And student assets are counted at 20% on the FAFSA. So if a child has $10,000 in an UGMA account, it's going to reduce their aid eligibility by $2,000. So that's the big difference. You know, the parent 529 account, whether it's owned by the parent or the dependent student, is going to affect aid much less. But that's not even the biggest financial aid advantage. The biggest advantage is that when the parent takes a distribution from the 529 plan, again, whether it's owned by the parent or the dependent student, nothing is reported on the FAFSA when the funds are withdrawn. So that's great as long as the parent or a dependent student owns the account. There is an issue, however, if someone else owns the account, such as a grandparent, which I know I saw a few questions come through already regarding grandparent-owned accounts. So let's go ahead and talk about that. For grandparents, nothing will be counted on the FAFSA as long as the funds are held in the grandparent-owned account. So as the grandparent's saving and earning interest on their money for college, that's no problem. The issue arises when the grandparent takes the money out to help pay for college, because that's going to be counted as student income. And if you remember from the other slide, student income is counted at up to 50% in the EFC calculation. So someone asked, are these plans available for grandchildren? And if so, how does it affect financial aid? And who is it better for, the grandparent or the parent to own the account? You know, anyone can contribute to a child's existing plan, so grandparents always have that option to contribute to a parent-owned account or if someone else owns it. But the grandparent can also open the account in their own name and name the child as the beneficiary. And of course, for the purpose of this slide, if we're talking about grandparents, this could also mean aunts and uncles. It's really anyone other than the parent. So first, I'm going to touch on some benefits to having the 529 plan in a grandparent's name. Number one, the grandparent's going to retain control of the account and can take the money back if needed. So that might be an advantage for some grandparents. Maybe down the line they need the funds for something else, whether it be medical expenses or some other type of emergency. They can always take the money back if the account is in their name. Of course, if they do take a non-qualified distribution, they will owe income tax and a 10% penalty, but only on the earnings portion of the distribution. So that principal, the amount that they originally invested, they'll always be able to take back at any time. Secondly, their gift, the grandparent contribution may be deductible from state income tax. I know someone specifically asked about this earlier. As Matt mentioned, over 30 states offer a state income tax deduction or tax credit for 529 plan contributions. And most states will allow anyone who contributes to the 529 plan to claim that deduction. So if you want to, you know, contribute a couple $100s for your nephew's, you know, 8th grade graduation to his parent-owned account, depending on what state you live in, you might be able to get a tax benefit for that. However, there are 10 states that only offer that tax benefit to the 529 plan account owner. So grandparents want to be aware that if they live in one of those 10 states, maybe they do want to be the owner on the account. So for example, in New York, contributions to a New York 529 plan of up to $5,000 per year or $10,000 for married couples are deductible from their state income tax. But this is only if the account owner or their spouse, it's only eligible for the account owner or their spouse. And finally, just remember, assets held in the grandparent account are not reported on the FAFSA as long as they stay in the account. So again, those are some great benefits, but you do have to worry about the withdrawals and counting as student income. So the amount's going to be reported as student income on the FAFSA and assessed at up to 50%, meaning that a grandfather who wants to give $10,000 to help pay for college could reduce the grandchild's financial aid by as much as $5,000. So how do we get around that? Well, fortunately, savingforcollege.com does have some recommendations for grandparents who want to keep the account in their name. First of all, maybe just wait to start contributing until at least after January 1 of the grandchild's sophomore year of college, assuming the grandchild's graduating in 4 years. But the FAFSA is going to look at income from 2 years prior. So if you want to let the funds sit in the account, let it sit in the grandparent-owned account, earn a little bit more interest, and then start helping out junior and senior year of college. And that way, the income won't even count on the FAFSA because we're already beyond that point. Another option is to roll over the money from the grandparent 529 to the parent 529, one year's worth of tuition at a time. Just wait until after the FAFSA is filed to transfer the funds from the grandparent 529 to the parent 529 so that it won't be reported as an asset on the FAFSA. And you also want to be sure to spend the money to pay your tuition before the next year's FAFSA comes around. A word of note on that, just be sure to open the parent account in the same state as the grandparent 529 because some 529 plans, some states have recapture rules when you roll the funds over to a different state's 529. So for example, say you're a grandparent and you own the account to get that tax benefit, as we mentioned before, by rolling funds into a parent account in a different state, you may be required to pay back that tax benefit that you previously claimed. So just watch out for that. Quick recap on withdrawals. So withdrawals from a 529 plan owned by a parent or dependent student are going to have the least impact on financial aid eligibility. $10,000 in a 529 plan owned by the dependent student or their parents will only reduce aid by a maximum of $564. But $10,000 in a 529 plan owned by an independent student will reduce eligibility by as much as $2,000. That's that 20% of student assets. And then finally, the big whopper, $10,000 distribution from a grandparent-owned 529 plan can reduce aid eligibility by as much as $5,000. I'm just going to check really quick to see if there's any financial aid questions I can answer. Someone asked if their child is the owner of the 529, can they change the owner to themselves? You can, most plans do permit a change in 529 plan ownership, but if your child is a dependent student, it shouldn't be an issue. It wouldn't affect the FAFSA because, as we mentioned before, what we're talking about is 529 plans owned by the parents or a dependent student receive that favorable financial aid treatment. We've got a few more minutes, so I want to go ahead and touch on 529 plan withdrawals because I know we had some questions about those as well. Basically, when you withdraw from the 529 plan, you don't want to end up paying taxes or penalty. So we're going to go ahead and run through quickly how you can do that. What you want to do first is add up all of your qualified education expenses. Make sure you include college expenses, as we mentioned before, and also up to $10,000 per year in K through 12 tuition. Next, you want to subtract any tax-free educational assistance, and that's going to include scholarships, employer assistance, and also veterans educational assistance. So any other tax-free help that you got, you can't double dip. So also you want to take out any funds generated, used to generate the American Opportunity Tax Credit or the Lifetime Learning Credit. So the AOTC, if you're taking that maximum credit, that's $4,000 you want to subtract from your calculation. And then when you get to that point, you'll get the qualified education expenses, which will be your tax-free distribution. A couple of you have also asked about scholarships, and I know Matt touched on this before, but we'll say it again really quick. You can withdraw up to the amount of a tax-free scholarship without penalty, but the earnings portion of the distribution is going to be taxed as ordinary income. So again, the penalty is waived in the case of scholarships, but the earnings on the withdrawal will be subject to income tax. To avoid paying taxes, you can change the beneficiary to another qualifying family member, or you can keep the money in the account to be used for graduate school. And on that note, I did read a couple questions regarding graduate school. Yes, 529 plans can be used for graduate school and overseas institutions, as long as you just confirm that the school is eligible by using the tool that we provide on savingforcollege.com. Okay, and then how to withdraw from the plan. Withdrawals must match up with qualified expenses incurred during the same year. So for example, don't withdraw in December to pay spring tuition. We recommend the distribution being paid to the beneficiary. So if there's any, that way if there's any non-qualified withdrawals, they're going to be taxed at the beneficiary's lower tax rate. And then also keeping it away from the school will help avoid any complications. To withdraw from your plan, you're going to fill out a form on the plan's website. It's usually called a withdrawal request. And you're going to indicate how you want the withdrawal, who you want it payable to. If you're withdrawing to, if you're changing anything else in the plan, like doing a partial withdrawal, you might want to change your investment options. So you can do that at this time as well in the same form. And that's pretty simple. You could find that out on the plan's website. And many of you are also asking, what happens if the child doesn't go to college? Do you get a refund on your money that you've saved? Not exactly. What you don't necessarily get the money back. You are always welcome to take the money back, but if you're using it for something other than qualified education expenses, it will be considered a non-qualified distribution, and you will be subject to income tax and a 10% penalty on the earnings portion. So some other options are to change the beneficiary to a qualifying family member who will attend college, or you could save the money for graduate school or even further your own education. Say you want to take classes at your local community college, those may qualify as well. Or save the funds for a future grandchild. But either way, if you have leftover money, there are options. And I can see we're just about out of time, so I want to take a minute to just thank everyone. Thank you, Matt, for helping out today with the presentation. And also thank you to Upromise for sponsoring this presentation. Again, please let us know how we did. We welcome your feedback. And I hope everyone has a great 529 day, and check out what your state has to offer. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie.